Ola, when I came in, Kelly said to me you all were hoping to be I'd rather have that. I think it's a good idea to have that conversation now versus 6:20. Is there, in the event we have to relocate, can we do so in the conference room back there?
Part of it won't be live streamed back there. No, it's at 7. For ours, it won't matter. I mean, if nobody's online for us, then we'll just end our live stream. Conference room.
I just thought it might as well just, rather than it be 6:20.
Sure.
I wanted to.
Sure. Well, no, we don't have, we'd like 6:45 at the latest, probably. They just need time to be able to get in here and get set up for their meeting.
Okay, I don't want to, I just want to make sure you guys get your questions addressed, so, got it. All right, in interest of time, I'll gavel in.
Recording in progress.
The special meeting of the Ways and Means Committee. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderwoman Harder. Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
All members present.
Item 2 is approval of the agenda. Any changes or amendments? Seeing none, that one agenda will stand approved by acclamation. Item 3 is report of committee and chair. I have no report. Alderman Gould.
No report.
Alderwoman Harder.
No report.
Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
Item 4A on the agenda is surplus distribution for fiscal year 2013-14 in the 2013-14 health plan year.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sims. This is great news. Periodically, we receive a check back from Slate, which is the St. Louis Area Insurance Trust, and this is a return of surplus from the health plan for fiscal year 2013 and 2014. And what this means is that the city, with all the claims for that particular year, did not spend more than what the premium was, so they're returning part of our premium back to us. And this is something that's unusual, because if we were not part of this trust and we had the private sector being the city's insurance carrier, they would keep that money and it would go to their profit margin. So there's clearly the difference. I have provided this check to Michelle Depew, who has deposited this. So this is a little higher than, I was researching what we got last year, and I think I got distracted somehow in the middle of this. So I'm not able to provide you what we would have gotten for 2012-13 year, but this is 2013-14, and the amount is $61,458.
I recall it was around 30,000 something.
So it was half of this.
Great.
That's my update.
Getting money back is always nice. Are there any comments? Alderwoman Tice.
Of course, I have a question. So this is really great news on the health insurance side, and I guess my question is, how are the reserves on the other part of Slate?
They are so much better. I don't have that information with me. I will send it to you, the entire committee, and then put it on the agenda for the next meeting. Okay. So we are seeing significant improvement in that, primarily because our claims history, workers' comp particularly, is reversing itself. We don't have as many injuries as we had before.
Okay, great. I would look forward to seeing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any more comments? I'm seeing nods to no. We'll move on because I try to be efficient as possible. Item 5A on the agenda is the financial statements.
I would like to defer that to the November meeting. Michelle is not here tonight,
Okay.
and she's asked to wait until then so she can do the report.
All right, that'll be deferred. Item 6 is the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes that are identified from October 3rd and October 18th?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, they are standing approved. Item 7 is old business. 7A is fiscal year 2024 proposed budget presentations. Bola, who would you like to have lead off on that?
Eric?
That's impressive. It's a good start. The AV works.
Oh.
Then I messed it up. That was my hand. Wasn't AV. All right, so in the, try to keep everything moving along. A few. We have our Parks and Recreation, which is basically all Fund 50. So that's it. Any questions? Just kidding. So as everything, we talk about accomplishments, and we wanted to, basically 2023 was all about opening Brentwood Park. Not only about opening Brentwood Park, but that was a big milestone in our department, and what we've done, what we've used it for since then has been, we've been very excited. So that was a wonderful accomplishment. The master plan process, obviously, we started that, and we're in the middle of that. The survey should be coming out soon. That will bleed into next year because of timing of some things. We helped with the creation of the sustainability plan. Again, something we're really proud of, that's been approved, and now we can start working on it. About $500,000 in grants and funding for the Wetland Arboretum in Brentwood Park. And again, going back to something in Brentwood Park, we've already earned $11,000 on pavilion rentals for that main pavilion. So we're seeing good usage for it. We have 6 rentals in November, and we already have 4 or 5 in December, so it's going to be a year-round facility, and that's something that's really exciting for us. So looking at next year, the first and foremost is opening the destination playground. So we're looking at kind of a 2-prong approach. One will be kind of a ribbon cutting when we're done with substantial completion, which is what will be early January is what we've, or mid-January now is what we heard at the last board meeting. And then what will be left is landscaping. The stuff that won't be able to go in this year, we'll finish landscaping in March, April, things like that, and then we'll go final completion. So sometime in early spring, we'll do a grand opening celebration. So January is not the greatest time to have a 3-hour event, so but we know that we don't want to keep the fence up. 1, it'll cost us more money, and 2, if we have a 70-degree day in January, we'll have kids out on that thing. So we'll do the ribbon cutting, we'll open it, and then we'll celebrate a lot. The next thing is kind of how do we activate the park? This is something we're really excited to look at, really trying to make that what it is, which is a regional destination, and also help it become an economic driver of the city. So how do we partner with businesses? How do we make sure people know they can stop by at the coffee shop before coming in the park? How can we let them know that Panera is right down the street? Go shop in Brentwood before you come to the park, those type of things, and build those relationships now and even as we get into redevelopment. So that's one of the things. Enhanced department marketing efforts. We think we do a decent job of what we do in marketing. We always look to ways to improve. We're really touch base with the school district. We made great strides with working with the school district this past year and really making that a true partnership a little bit more and making sure that we and the school district understands the value of what we're doing and our value to have attention, all the parents' eyes on our things and things like that. And then we'll continue to look at sustainable practices. One of the things, sorry, so many binders here. Make sure I get the right thing. Is one of the things we talked about is EV, and I know we've all been talking about electric vehicles and things like that. And it's in my other binder. But the idea is the one thing that we're doing is we are working with Ameren UE on a fleet electrification plan. It's a program that Ameren UE has that will evaluate your fleet. We'll take a look at where there is improvements that if you do electric will be a benefit to the city, and we'll do a cost analysis and also a CO2 analysis. And so our kickoff meeting is November 3rd, so Friday, November 3rd. So that is one of the Sustainable Commission's goals, commission's goals. It's one of staff's goals to kind of work on this fleet plan. And so I know there's been a lot of talk about the electrification of our fleet, and we think this is a great starting point to do that. So that's one of the main things we'll be doing this year, as long as a lot of other things. And again, stop me at any time. The big thing I want to talk about is fund balance, and fund balance is the key to what we do in Fund 50. And when I first started, I tell the story all the time. Bola's like, you need to build fund balance. It's like she's scared the living crud out of me. She's like, you have to build it or you'll lose your job. I don't know if it's that bad.
Not say that.
But an idea is to build fund balance. And what we've done with fund balance in my time is we spent $2 million of fund balance to renovations to the community center. We used fund balance to help with the payment of Mount Calvary. We've used fund balance to help with the destination playground. And that's only because we've been able to build our fund balance, and that's the goal of what we do. At that destination playground meeting, we told you if we use the fund balance that we anticipate for the destination playground, we'd probably be about $1.2 million of fund balance at the end of Brentwood Bound, which was still 27% operating cost, which is still good. What you see in the budget book at the end of 2024, which is when Brentwood Bound hopefully will be done, is $2.6 million in fund balance. So we're able to bridge that gap a little bit more. A huge chunk of that was the West Community Credit Union donation. So that helped bridge a lot of that. But other things, savings and things like that, and staff has been able to kind of build that up. So we start with 2.6 and then we hopefully build. And so it's hard to tell. And if you look at the budget book, since Brentwood Bound is in our fund, you'll see a big negative number for 2024. That is still construction of Brentwood Bound. So we see in just Parks and Recreation about $91,000 net increase to our fund balance. In 25, it's 55,000, and in 26, 102,000. I will be the happiest person. Bull and Michelle will tell you this when Brentwood Bound's over, and I can truly get back my Fund 50, and you kind of see it. It's a lot easier to see than trying to dig through all the Brentwood Bound stuff. So that's where we're at fund balance. So the good thing is that we're balanced. We're adding to the fund balance, and we hope to continue to do that to have capital in there for future projects if we need it.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah, and unless it gets
Please.
away from us, please
Yep.
consider this an open forum where you don't have to wait for me to recognize you.
So, as it relates to revenue from sponsors, where do we stand on other parts of the playground, destination playground? I know there was some exploration of trying to find corporate sponsors for.
Yeah, we're still working on some. We had a meeting last month with a credit union. Don't want to say which one until
Yeah.
hopefully it come through. But it's still on my list because more than anything else, it's great that we're almost done with Brentwood Bound. Now I look to 5, 10, 15, 20 years of how I'm going to make sure we maintain Brentwood Bound properly.
Right.
So everything that we're doing now is looking to the future and helping, I always use the word endowment, fund balance, something like that, to try to make sure we build money for that. So we continue to look for those type of partnerships. We have a lot of people who are really interested in just having discussions, and we hope some of those come through. We have a couple other things that Bull and I are talking about, which are a little premature to say out at
Okay.
a public meeting, but
Sure.
we're continuing to work on those. So revenue, the big thing with revenue for just the Parks and Recreation Department is you do see the 4.17% increase in sales tax, much like every other fund that's attributed to the tax incrementing finance districts being paid off. Hanley Station and I forgot the other one off the top of my head. Hanley Station and what's the other finance district being paid off or has been paid off?
Meridian.
Meridian, thank you. So those are the two that come up. And then program fees, and I'll talk a little bit more about program fees coming up. But the big thing is you see increase in fitness, increase in general programming, sports programming, rink programming. We said last year that we were back from COVID. We hit our 2019 numbers in fees and charges. We do over $1 million in fees and charges a year. And we were back to kind of 2019 numbers, and we continue to see increases in that. And a lot of that's in programming. It's hopefully you can kind of see it, but we are estimating this year $171,000 in programming, and that is keep ice rink in ice rink. So that is just general programming, sports, fitness, and senior programming. So from those four areas, we're looking at estimating $171,000 this year and $207,000 next year. You see the correlation of what we're doing there with general programming, and that is basically our kids programming. Primarily, we're just starting to get into kind of adult programming, which has been what we've wanted to do for a while. And so you kind of see how that has built over the last 3 years from 21, well, actually from the start of 2022, which is when we brought in Cheryl Riley, who's one of our main programmers. We're about 1,000% increase over 2024 over when she started. She's been wonderful. You saw in the past, we were slugging along. We kind of got it there right before COVID, dipped back down because of COVID. but now we're really taking off, and that is lots attributed to her. We're also seeing increases, hopefully now with Brentwood Park is what we're expecting to see some more increases in programming. So programming is robust for a city this size. I mean, for a small community, to do $200,000 in programming in just those 4 areas, I think is pretty good. Please. Mhm. We, we, we enjoy doing that. We did some virtual programming too. We've kept, we don't do it as much, but we do have we have a New Year's box. So if you want to celebrate New Year's at home, we'll put together the box, make you do everything. We did an Easter box last year. We'll probably do an Easter box again this year. I'll tell you that programmers are wonderful. They're unique. They're interesting. It takes a lot to be a programmer. I started in sports and programmed myself, but Cheryl is one of a kind. She has a good pulse on it. She researches the heck out of what other people are doing and what's successful. She makes it her own. And I think one of the things like what's coming up is the Wine and Whiskey Walk in November. We're sold out 3 weeks ahead of time. We max out 300 people for first year. We wanted to make sure 300 was good. So we'll have 300 people in our park walking around in November, drinking some whiskey, drinking some wine. We have some heaters. We have charcuterie boards. So it's those type of things that I think she's done a wonderful job at. Now, that does bring problems. And the problems is that we see what we want to do and we're not done yet. We want to continue with adult programming. We feel like, especially that 25 to 42 age group is something that we think we can hit, especially with the different condominiums and apartments, and to build as if we do get some of those apartment complexes in the redevelopment area, we feel like there'll be a market there that we can help tap into. But we're maxed out. I mean, our staff is doing as much as they can, as much as more than they can actually do, honestly. So the budget does include an additional recreation specialist. It's an entry-level position. We have one already in programming. This would be a second one. We call it administration. So ironically, the timing of what those staff have to do, it's not so much the programming. Programming is the fun part. It's the calls about meeting rooms. We do $158,000 in meeting room rentals. We have 3 meeting rooms up in the center. 4, you can split it off. 158,000, that's a lot. It's 13,000, 13,500 a month. And so we get a lot of business doing there. You imagine those phone calls and walking people through setups and rules and all that fun stuff, things like that. This position will also be responsible for pavilion rentals, which again has become a little bit more intense with Brentwood Park. It's a good problem to have, but it is a problem. And it also would deal with the management of the welcome desk staff. So there truly would be sort of administration, and it would also help out with programming if needed. So that's the position we're requesting if we do that. If we do that, we think that we can continue to build programming and events. And when we talk about activating Brentwood Park, those are the things like, hey, maybe the first Saturday every month we have someone playing the amphitheater, acoustic guitar with maybe a face painter, just to remind people to come down to the park. And then once we get them into Brentwood, they go to the Brentwood stores, they go to Brentwood restaurants, and we get them to spend their tax money in Brentwood. So that's what we're trying to develop. And we'll have a lot of grandiose ideas, and Cheryl's scared of almost all of them. I think the idea is that, we need some additional help to be able to do things like that. We do see increases, big increases in full-time park maintenance, salaries, contractual supplies, and really the reason for that is because we're being in charge of Brentwood Park for a full year. Last year we saw the increase for 6 months. We said we'd open in June, so it's basically a half year of those increases. Now we see that full increase and what that means to the budget. I will say that we probably need a couple years of running that park to really understand where our expenditures are going to be. We always budget high for expenditures. The last thing we want to do is come back and say, no, we're off our expenditures, we think we need more money, which then just cuts into our net bottom line. So that what we're showing with that 91,000, the total net benefit is with a high park maintenance budget. Overtime, we did increase overtime too, and that's reciprocal a lot of times with staff because a lot of times when I first got here, most of our staff took comp time, which didn't account against the budget. It just gave them additional days off basically. And so we paid for it either way, but we actually pay for it financially through overtime, so that's where you see that coming in. And we also, most importantly with Dan, is funding to complete projects is identified in the Stormwater Master Plan for that first section that I think they're working on, the bid documents now. We have that in the budget to get done next year. Talk a little about street trees. I know there's some questions last time about street trees, so I just wanted to make sure I give a slide and hopefully answer some questions. So in 2016, the Parks and Recreation Department took over management of street trees. Lots of reasons. The very simple one is that we had an arborist on our staff and Public Works didn't at the time. And so basically we said, let's do it, we'll take it over. And then the first question was, well, who pays for that? And so we talked to the city attorney. City attorney said, unfortunately, that the criteria of street trees do not meet the criteria for the Recreation and Stormwater Fund. So that's why it's still in the general fund. So if that's the kind of the basis of that. And then if you look at,
Could
sorry.
I ask a question about
Yeah.
that? So I appreciate that makes, if the attorney said that for the sales tax revenue, that if that's the rule, then that's the rule. But you just talked about the 1.3 million in additional revenue that you bring in from programming, and that surely does not have that same restriction from the tax base that
That's a
sales
good
tax
question.
does.
I think that's one that we'd have to talk to Kevin about. Yeah.
I'm just sort of, like, in my mind, I feel like this grocery tax is gonna happen, and we're just gonna get restrained, and this is just one that you do the work, you have other revenue that presumably could be streamed to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously something for discussion. I think like anyone else, you add additional expenditures into a budget, it's difficult. I will say that I think this is the only city I know that runs their street tree program through Parks and Recreation and not through the Public Works Department. But that's something we definitely talk to Kevin about.
And we know there's a reason for that. So that's why we moved parks from Public Works to parks. I don't want to get too much into the detail, other than the fact that the work was not being done. And we had areas within the city where the property owners around the park in Ward 1 said they had been planting and taking care of trees. We also had individuals who, when they were taking down trees, you know, there's a procedure to taking down trees. Instead, they were just, and then busting the sidewalk. So there was not quality work being done, and I could go on. So then the decision was made by me with approval of the board to transfer all those responsibilities back to parks. So that's why those decisions were made. But certainly, I think there's value in exploring what you just said, Alderwoman Tice. We will take a look at that unless you are proposing that this go into effect for '24. If it's future for whatever happens with the grocery tax, then we can explore it for the fiscal year '25 budget.
I am comfortable exploring it for the '25 budget,
Okay.
but I think we need to explore it whether the grocery tax happens or not. I
Right.
just think they're just things that, to clean it up. I mean, if this,
I think what we can easily do is have that conversation and either bring it back here to Public Works and start the conversation.
Right.
Happy to do that.
thank you.
The other thing is I know Dan, I don't know if Dan was able to explain why there's the variation year from trees. And the biggest thing is, the biggest part of that budget is the preventive maintenance of the trees. And we do it every 4 years by ward, so every year by ward. So it obviously depends on how many trees you have in each ward and the size of the trees in each ward, because obviously pruning a larger tree is more expensive than pruning a smaller tree. So while Ward 3 has the most trees at 284, one more than Ward 1. Ward 1 is more expensive, mainly because their trees are bigger.
Surprise.
Ironically, Ward 4 has the least amount. So next year, that budget amount will be much lower. I'll tell you that preventive maintenance is critical, especially for liability. So if we do have a storm and a tree branch comes down, As long as we show that we are being preventive with our maintenance, then it's really an act of God. It's not a liability of the city. So that's I'm 1-0 in court cases because of that. So
As far as the work that's going to be done by MSD through a lot of Ward 3 and how's that going to affect the street tree budgets and all of that? Because, that's going to affect a lot of trees.
it will, but the thing is that one, they're still in design, so they're still massaging the design, and two, they won't be doing anything till 26.
Oh, okay, that's right.
So I
That's
think
right.
a lot
Okay.
of it depends on what their final design is, and then where we're at in 26, which would be Ward 1. So we would look at those trees as we go into that budget year.
Yeah, but it would also be good to know which ones are going to be affected so that we don't trim them, prune them, spend money on trees that are going to be removed in 2 years, So the sooner we know that, the better.
Yeah, unless it's a
Right.
a hazard that we need to take care of.
Understood,
and
yeah.
Liability, yep, exactly. So the other thing that includes is funding for tree removals and tree plantings, and then emergency removals, emergency work, which could be either pruning or removals after a storm. And you'll see kind of some variations year after year due to what happens with storm damage. So this year, we've been okay. Last year in 22, when that microburst came right through the center of town, multiple times, we had a little bit more money in emergency removals, but that's kind of a brief introduction to street trees. Takes you on to capital. So our capital includes the Brentwood Park Master Plan. I told you it's going to bleed into this year, so we put money in the budget for it. The Zamboni or Olympia, depends on which one we'll go with, is in there. I don't know if you've heard this, but production time is slow. So we're at 16 months for a new machine, which is good. We're really looking, we can eke out one more year out of it. And so if we do the deposit this year, that's what the funding is for the deposit this year, and then we have the bulk of the funding in there next year. The Wetland Arboretum Project, which is being done with grant funding through the 319. So that is grant money in, expenditures out. We just had the 50% design review with SWT and all the partners. And so at some point, we'll be bringing that to Public Works to kind of show you guys what it looks like. It's really exciting. It's also very ecologically specific. So we're looking at 3 phases that might be over 10 years because they wanted to ecologically kill out the invasives with trees and grass before putting in some other things. It's a little bit over my head, but Scott Woodbury, who is on the team, who's a Brentwood resident, is a huge ecologist in the city and is well known and is the one putting together that plan. So we'll be able to come and talk to you guys about that here shortly. Hanley Park Comfort Station and Parking Lot Expansion, that's been something that's been on the books for a couple years. Really what it does is replaces we have a pavilion, we have a bathroom, it combines them into a pavilion and restroom building, much like all of our other ones. More importantly, expands the parking lot. Yes, it doubles, almost, well, more than doubles the total spaces we have right now. And then we also have, the Memorial Park Bridge Replacement Project, which you guys approved already. Again, that's splitting into 2 fiscal years, so that's the money for next year. And then we have 3 park maintenance equipments, which are primarily due to the new Brentwood Park, which is a new truck. We hired the new staff a couple years ago, well, last year. Our fleet is too small to travel everyone, especially throughout different places. A new larger tractor, and then a wing deck mower, which is basically gives you 32 inches of cutting on each side. So we now have some big swaths of grass with Mount Calvary. The sports complex always took a long time, and then some, we might even use it in the new Brentwood Park. So that wing deck mower gets us be able to be more efficient and get that mowing done a little bit quicker. And the last, I think Dan talked about, is the Public Works and Park Maintenance Facility Design. If we identify a spot and we know that that's what we want to do, that's the money to do the design so that we can work on figuring out the cost estimate and what we're going to do with everything. So
I don't doubt the Henley Park Comfort Station and parking lot expansion project will be a pretty big part of the Parks Master Plan, but as far as expenditures on that, it seems to me that we should probably get a sense for the full the new master plan, not the one that has been in the works for a while, but the new one that we're paying for, and then evaluate the projects that are on that. So it's interesting to me. I almost want to have some money set aside for implementation of Parks Master Plan for 2004, but maybe not earmark it for the Hanley Comfort Station and parking lot expansion. So I'm just curious on why we would put that in without full knowledge of the full plan.
Sure, I'll tell you that the master plan's taking into consideration that design that has already been done.
Right.
And so that will be very similar to what you'll see in the final plan and the master plan, because it was, I mean.
Being worked on, right.
Right, the team worked on it, and more importantly, it would be a waste of money to kind of then say, actually, we're gonna do this and change it around. So we're being cognizant of that. We gave the team all the plans for everything. Not only that, the old master plan, the Rogers Parkway expansion, if we wanted, the Greenway, if we wanted to do that, they got everything that we have done to date so that they could either integrate it or tell us how we might want to veer off of it. So yes, we're still having those conversations. The reason that's in there twofold is, one, as we mentioned during the design project, that bathroom is not ADA accessible. It continues to have problems. It's continued to fail. So instead of putting money into a bathroom that's really not even accessible and really doesn't even meet the needs of what that complex is now, it'd be better to move forward with that. I am cognizant of everything else. So if you look at my budget line, which is 25 and 26, we have basically a blank dollar amount that says master plan projects, because we don't want to do anything else until we see what happens. And don't get me wrong, while this is our budget, this is a guide, and if we come back and the master plan says, really the first thing you should do is X, I'd probably look at, well, let's say I gotta go back to Public Works and Ways and Means and say, hey, I said this is what we want to do this year, but the master plan tells us we should probably do this instead.
Understood.
And we would readjust.
Great, yep.
I'll just follow on to that, I mean, this is going to be a $500,000 project over 2 years. And I have not ever had anyone say, I really need to use the bathroom there. And I have people constantly saying, there are leaves on the ground, there's not a street sweeper, I'm tripping on the sidewalk. Like, that's what I hear. And so that's why I question why the trees are not in the parks budget. I question why it's going to be in administration, why the Brentwood Days is not in the parks budget. The holiday party is not in the parks budget, because if those were in Fund 50, then that's other money that could be spent on things that certainly I hear about from our residents, and I don't hear about. I hear that they can't play pickleball because there are people playing basketball, but I don't hear about a bathroom. So this, I'm more comfortable if we approved money in the budget for something with the park. And, if this is the top thing coming out of the Parks Master Plan, that's great. You convinced us at the Public Works meeting that the bridge replacement was your top thing for next year, so that's already going to happen. But this one, there are a lot of other park needs that weren't around 8 years ago when that plan was done. So I sort of question
But there are
the
also,
spending of this.
we were not doing a good job of maintaining any of our parks. And since Eric has been hired, then there has been more commitment to do that, because all the money that they were bringing in from the recreation program was in general fund.
Right.
Because general fund was not sustainable. And we needed that to have a balanced budget. And it wasn't until after more of the TIFs got paid off that we were able to move the recreation fees back to the Parks and Stormwater Fund.
And I like that there's a fund balance. I'm thrilled that there was fund balance in order to buy a park that's going to be in Ward 1. I'm like the fiscal responsibility. I just feel like we're in a slightly different phase, and fire and police were the two departments that have less money than last year, and now we're talking about, over 2 years, a $500,000 parking lot and new building, which, while maybe needed, and I know you have your own budget, and it's Fund 50, and it's not the general fund, but it's all, the residents don't know that. And the residents just know that they trip on the sidewalks, and that the street needs to be repaved, and that we've spent all this money on Brentwood Bound, and they don't care that there's a special sales tax. We've spent a lot of money on parks, and this is more money on parks, and they're seeing the things in their neighborhood, they perceive that they're deteriorating when they're right in front of their house.
I can understand completely. Don't get me wrong, because anytime someone brings up the cost of the playground, I cringe when we talk about other things. Am I excited about it? Yes. Is it going to be beautiful? Yes. Do I believe parks brings in money to the city? I do. I think that this park will be an economic driver for this city. I believe, especially when we get the redevelopment completed, that people are going to move into that space and spend money there because they're right next to the park. I do believe that they'll go have breakfast somewhere, go out to our park, do some stuff, come back for lunch, or go to the beer garden or something. I do. And so I begrudgingly talk about the fact that I am a parks person, so this is self-serving, but I feel like we are an essential service. Everyone is essential in the city. If it wasn't essential, they wouldn't have it. But especially during COVID, you saw the need for parks. You saw the need to be able to get out and recreate and be able to enjoy nature and everything like that. And while I do understand, when you look at other things, it's hard when we look at the budget to kind of compartmentalize, right? What I will say is that our department works hard. We work hard to make sure that we do wonderful programs, run wonderful facilities to earn revenue so that we can then enhance our parks to even help out even more. So, I mean, I do understand. To talk specifically about the two events you talked about, the holiday party and the and Brentwood Days, those are community-driven events.
Then, what's the difference in that and Brentwood Beats? I mean, that's also community. You don't charge to go to Brentwood Beats. I feel like that's also a community event. So, I don't get the line.
So the MOE, which is the municipal operating expenditure, that's where we budget for citywide expenses. So, I mean, we could easily move it from community service to MOE, or if the directive is to put it in parks and stormwater, that's also for consideration. But then, you talk about street sweeper, and typically those kind of costs come from capital.
Right.
So if what you're hearing is that there's greater priority to go buy X, there's always the fund balance. And you can direct staff, pull the money from fund balance to make this purchase. End of story. And we've talked about that when we presented the capital budget. So today could be an option for you to give consideration. Do you want to provide staff another direction? Take a look at fund balance. And these are the items that's on the list of things that were not funded. And instead of waiting till next year when we know the outcome of grocery tax or whatever else comes up, we want this to be modeled into the budget. So that's something that Ways and Means can discuss tonight.
Well, I'm comfortable with the direction that we took when we started this budget. Like, I don't want to go back and change and say, oh yeah, I'm hearing complaints, let's take fund balance. I'm also like, we need to be cautious of our tax dollars. What I'm saying is Fund 50 has a separate pot of money, there's a separate tax revenue coming in, and there are separate revenues coming in. And you have done an amazing job with this Parks Department, and I don't want to penalize you for doing a great job, because our Parks Department is great. But I hear a lot from residents that all we do is spend money on parks because they perceive all of parks as Brentwood bound and all of this. And so I guess I'm just questioning why there are these things, and it's not the capital budget. I mean, I'm mixing I'm mixing things
It's all
together
the city's
too.
money.
But that's the perception that's out there. And so I guess I just want to think a little bit differently about how we've budgeted for years.
And
Because
and
it's always been done that way.
I don't think I overspeak with my staff if you guys say like, look, Brentwood Days used to be run by City Hall, and when it first started, it was a City Hall driven event. We'll happily give it back to City Hall. Trust me, it is not a easy thing to do. So I mean, we're happily give it back to Bull and her staff, and we'll still have our park maintenance guys out there cleaning up trash. But trust me, we would love to do that. Holiday parties the same way.
Eric, 620.
I'm sorry, 620. So we'll move on. Brentwood Bound, I know that's part of the thing too. And to be honest, there's not much to discuss about Brentwood Bound. We're wrapping up. We're showing $3 million in revenue this year. It's all revenue that's been not earned, but recognized. So basically, it's grants that we have to wait till the end of grants. It's like the GRG, last part of the GRG payment, a couple municipal park grants. So all that money that comes in as reimbursables. And so that's that $3 million with about $5 million left, or 5.6 in expenditures. And so the total 98.8 equals completely. And what the key activities are: the destination playground, GRG Part B will start construction. I know, we've talked about that could bleed into 25. If that happens, then we'll have to put in some money and revenue depending on where that is for next year. My hope is that we get it done. And then really flood mitigation phase 1 and 2 is establish it and maintenance. So basic stuff that we've all heard for a while. And that is my presentation.
I had one question about the Memorial Bridge replacement project. How are we looking on that? Are we starting this year?
Yeah, we've already had, our pre-construction meeting. We're working on the timeline. They're working on the timeline. The bridges have been ordered. They'll be in March. And so what they're going to do this year is demolition and get everything ready so all the concrete footings and things like that, and have those ready so that when March comes, we're literally just bring it in on a crane, drop it, secure it, and go.
Okay, so the money we expected to spend in this fiscal year, we are going to spend.
I'm open, so yes.
So that it doesn't carry over and then all of a sudden a $200,000 bridge now is more.
If that does happen, the good news is that our fund balance will increase whatever that we don't spend.
Yeah,
And
true,
then, yeah.
true. Okay.
Open forum.
Okay. So the ice resurfacer, how old is the one you're replacing, and is this significantly better, and why is this particular item?
Yeah, so we are usually on an 8-year recycle. That one is on 10 years. Like everything else we've talked about, and we've expanded capital and moved it. It is, the idea of much like everything else is we have our backup is 22 years old. And so basically our new one becomes new, our current one becomes our backup, and we move everything there. There are some new features and bells and whistles, not bells and whistles, but features that things that aren't that's happened in 10 years. Like it will regulate your speed. So the issue with ice maintenance, if you go too fast, you leave too thin of ice. Once you go around the corners, you slow down a lot and your corners build up. This regulates the speed, so it makes sure that you have an easy, smooth drive every time. God, I love technology. AI soon will be driving it for us. Yeah.
I was sincere. If you've got questions, like.
You can. The issue with buying used is much like anyone else will tell you, is then your life expectancy is not as good, your maintenance is much higher, and all those other things.
The next item would be the administration department. Looks like Ola will be.
making sure that I have a presentation tonight. A lot of pages here, and budget. Our mission continues to provide leadership management, financial planning, information, and policy implementation to the elected officials, have confidence in our financial stewardship and can make informed decisions. And maintain a physically sound organization that conforms to legal requirements and to generally accepted financial management principles. Goals and objectives of the administration department reflects that of all the divisions that are under administration: finance, human resources, communications, IT. IT is under, even though it's contractual services, is under administration. Continue to be responsive in an expedient manner to our citizens and the elected officials. Provide ethical reporting and advisory services to the Board of Aldermen and departments in their decision-making. Keep the Board of Aldermen informed of important community issues as we find them, and ensure quality services continue to be delivered to the citizens of Brentwood. Communicate through all channels what is going on in the city and in the region that is impactful to our citizens, and communicate safety, the importance of safety to our employees, and functional areas of the city: legislative, policy implementation, budget development, strategic planning, public safety, and legal services. And it continues, and this is also in the budget document. I was not planning on going through all the accomplishments that staff have provided great work staff continue to provide in all these areas that are under administration. They can be found on pages 77, 78. The organizational chart is provided. Look at the authorized manpower. The one change that we have that has gone into effect this fiscal year, 2023, is the reclassification of the controller to the management analyst. All the other positions remain as is. Happy to report that we have a start date for the communications manager, and that is November 6th. So that will be the day of the board meeting, so she will be present at the meeting that evening. At this point, we do not have any vacancies in administration. So that is good news. Next is the proposed expenditure budget for administration, not including capital. For 2024, the proposed budget is 1.2 million. And I'd say maybe 95% of that cost is really salaries and benefits. Pages 82 through 84. So salaries and employee benefits under administration is 1.1 million. Then we have supplies and materials. So these are just major line items in administration, and I'll do the same review for major line items in community services and municipal operating expenditure. And then travel and meeting. And then under miscellaneous contractual, that is a higher amount, 45,000. And in there is funds for the compensation consultant. So in next fiscal year, we will be engaging the services of a compensation consultant, and most likely we will go out for an RFP, RFQ for the selection of a compensation consultant. And something that the Ways and Means Committee should probably look forward to is, back when the city hired the initial compensation consultant, there was parameters established, for instance? Who are our comparators? I think it's time to take a look at, and I think I've heard that comment made at this meeting, do we still have the same comparators? Or should we expand it to include X city or Y city? So those are some of the things that we will be talking to the compensation consultant about. Another item that should be discussed is if the philosophy for compensation for public safety remains the same versus the rest of the city. Those are things that we probably should know about it so that when a compensation consultant is selected, this can be communicated to that individual or to that organization. Other things that are paid out of miscellaneous contractual is contractual services for training citywide and an application fee for the comprehensive annual financial report to the Government Finance Officers Association. In terms of capital, it seems like a lot, but we are on a schedule to replace computers. And so that $17,600 is for the replacement of computers and printers for our employees in administration, which includes all those departments that I mentioned before.
I have a question on, as to the compensation consultant. I do think that's good to occasionally reevaluate our comparators, our philosophy. It's good to just, off and see if it's still appropriate. Can we also ensure, and this may be already baked in, that when we look at compensation, it's benefits too?
Comprehensive? Yes. Yes.
And I have a question on miscellaneous contractual. On page 84, you know, when you look at some of the prior years and even the current year, I mean, we're significantly higher than the 45,000 that's proposed for the budget. Is that realistic?
I have one word for you. Audit.
Audits.
That's why. That's why it was.
But you feel confident, though, that we're not going to need double this or more?
With Michelle here and the management analyst, and we continue to review it, I believe we won't. As a matter of fact, we're trying to take away some of the items, accounting services that CLA currently provides. We want to bring it in-house. So
Okay.
that's why we're comfortable. But if we get it wrong, we'll come back to the committee and talk to you about it. But right now, that's what we believe.
Okay, all right, yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that that's the case.
I am
you know,
too.
The trend of the past few years has
But
gotten me a
remember,
little-
we've had
behind us now.
vacancies.
Yes, I
Thank
understand.
You. Thank you, Alderwoman Sims. I want to forget it.
Yes, I'd
I
like to
can't.
forget it as well. But I want to forget it because we
have a better
see
plan.
progress. And,
Absolutely.
yes.
The next section I would like to talk about is community services. And I think that goes to some of the items that Alderwoman Tice brought up. And I think it's important for us to take a look at that. To say we continue to do this because we've always done it this way, it's never a good answer. And because someone's pointed it out to us, it's an eye-opener for us to reevaluate. So what I have on this page are the major line items in community services. And I will pause for you all to maybe take a look and let me know if you have specific questions about any one of those items.
I mean, I've got two items, question about, and making sure that the, I think the last meeting or two, or maybe even, I don't recall when that was, but I think that the branding proposal and the rebranding of Hanley Industrial Court, you know, should potentially be a combined effort.
Right.
And maybe some economies of scale there.
Sure.
Or just being able to have a bigger effort if we combine those. And so just making sure that that's something, the way that the budget book is broken out, that's something that we'd be able to do.
It's funded under two different departments, but, you know, we're one city.
Right.
So we will be collaborating on that.
Okay.
And I think that was the response at the last meeting.
Okay. And then the other question I have is really for Brentwood Days, the festival expenses, and you know, it's been, I think, fairly consistent year over year, just a little bit of a Let me just look here. I'm trying to see where is that in this? I was just curious if it needed to be increased at all, given like inflation of the cost of a.
Want more rides.
Well, I mean, I think that, yeah, inflation costs allowed us or forced us to sort of cut back on amount of rides and a few things. And then I think we saw the effect of that with some of the comments that we've received, in that fewer rides leads to longer lines, and, making sure that we adjust for that. I know there's been some discussion about sort of evaluating that. I just want to make sure that we're putting enough money into the budget to produce the festival that it seems like the community would like to see, in not necessarily more rides, but enough activities that it spreads out, lines and things like that. And I just want to make sure that it didn't seem to be a significant enough increase to allow for inflation adjustments and then also increasing activities.
We're comfortable with the budget to give the same event we've had in years past. There's things that we always want to do. We want to see if we can do something different, and we'll be bringing different ideas to Public Works next month to have a larger discussion about that. But when we budgeted in June, July, and August, we were budgeting for kind of our typical Brentwood days, which is, we're comfortable with that number.
Okay, I know your response in Public Works is going to go, well, if you give me money, I can, so I
Money, I can
I
do
love
anything.
to spend money. I can do anything, right? I
Right.
just want to have some foresight to that while we're at the budget discussion, so that we're not saying, well, here's what we really want to do, but it's going to cost 15%, 20% more, right?
I mean, the good and bad is that, most of our bigger expenses, our two biggest expenses are carnival rides and fireworks. Those are set prices because we have a 5-year contract.
Okay.
Bad news is, this is our year to renegotiate and put it out to bid again. Do I expect those prices to increase? No, I've talked to both the vendors that had the bid last year, like, no, we don't see anything typically coming through. Fireworks is very usually set price. It's $1,000 to $1,500 a minute. And so if we want to keep our budget, we can decrease. I'd love to do something with drones, but that's a conversation Alderwoman Tyson and I have had.
Yeah.
And as far as carnival rides, I think their biggest issue as far as inflation was gas, which has come down. It was also staffing. Coming out of COVID and some of the finance or some of the policies about immigration and summer visas, things like that, that's actually what hurt them the most.
Okay.
So they feel like they've got that under control again.
Still open forum.
A quick aside, since we're on Brentwood Days, there is a line in Fund 50 that is festival expenses, and it's been zeroed out for like the entirety of here, but there is actually a line in your budget for festival expenses, which I'm assuming is Brentwood Days, so I just bring it up again.
And again, if it goes back in Fund 50, we'll hand out Tootsie Rolls and call it, no, I'm just kidding.
Last major line item expense categories for municipal operating expenses on pages 87 through 89. The largest expense there is employee benefits, and then there's retiree benefits, which is the payout for vacation and sick for those that were employed with the city before that program went away. Of course, sick is still present to be paid out. And then there's utilities, insurance, which is all our insurance coverage, accounting services, which is the audit and things related to that, and then, of course, legal, whether that's city attorney, labor council, zoning council. That's that line item. And then we have miscellaneous contractual, and I kind of break out the big ticket items on there, which is really the IT cooperative, $333,006, the IT cooperative that we have with the city of Clayton. then there's all those remaining items. And then the next biggest transfer out expense, which is the general fund's contribution to the Stormwater and Parks Improvement Fund for the payment of the 2018 COPS. So if you remember, there's, in the budget book, we break out the percentage that comes from each fund, general fund, capital, storm, towards the payment of the 2018 COPS. That's what that is. So also within this presentation, we provide the performance measurements for the different departments in here. And my presentation.
An open forum.
I just have one comment that it's in legislative and it's on page 119. And it says that there were 10 regular meetings of the Ways and Means Committee. And I think that woefully neglects all the extra special meetings that this committee has. So I don't know if we have a record of actually what it was, but we met way more than 10 times last year, so
We will update that. I think at the time when we put that together, that was what we were forecasting. Definitely, I want to thank you all for agreeing to all these meetings. It's a lot of meetings, and quite frankly, they're fun, aren't they? Thank you.
All right, does the committee have any additional comments, questions?
There's just a minor couple of things. It seemed like there was some, and I'm sure you all will catch this when you go through and do the editing, but there were like, on page 89, there were certain percentages of changes that seemed to not correlate with what the numbers were there. The percentages still said 0, but there was actually a change.
If you find some of those,
but-
please share them with us.
Yeah, I mean,
Sometimes
they're
we miss
small
them.
little clerical things, but.
We'll take
you know,
another look.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it fair to say, would you characterize those as Scrivener's errors, not
Yeah.
substantive
Exactly.
issues with the budget? Okay.
Not,
Page 220?
Page, page number are you on? It's on your lower, it's right here. The page number? Oh,
Page.
oh, okay.
Okay. That's significant. It's not coming to mind. We'll take a look at that. It went from 500 to 200? We'll take another look at it and try to, so under miscellaneous contractual, we'll take a look at it.
miscellaneous expenses.
You think it's a general fund department? Okay. You've,
We already did that. 10 to 20? That. Oh, I think I marked that up. I have markings on that particular line, which leads me to believe that maybe we did discuss it. Okay. Just because I mean, I have a line, I have a circle.
We just spent more this year. So we budgeted 1,500, we're gonna budget 1,500 again, but we spent a lot more this year. That was the.
Um,
So before we do a motion to send this up to the big board, could I ask a question about the Hanley Comfort Station and parking lot expansion? So before, I guess, what's the timing on that? And like, if it's in the budget, are you gonna like march forward and plan this? Or is
The-
this all, like, before you do anything else, will it go to Public Works? Or is it, once it's in the budget, are you gonna say, oh yeah, well, they put it in the budget, so I'm gonna move forward?
The design has already been done. That was done last year.
Right.
So the idea is that it is a fall/winter project, so we'd be looking at going out to bid somewhere middle of the year, June, July, to try to get that done. We can obviously put a note to have a conversation at the May/June Public Works Committee meeting before we go out to bid.
And what's the timing of the Parks Master Plan along with that?
It should be before. That's my hope, is that it's early in the year, so January, February, March. Could you lose your economy of scale of having one person do both projects at the same time? And we'd actually probably have to redesign it because we wouldn't need as many BMPs in that area, because some of the BMPs that had to be done was because of the additional parking lot, which is of course unpaved, or not, is paved surface, so.
I didn't want to cut off the debate.
So I'll make a motion to forward the budget for 2024 onto the full Board of Aldermen with the caveat that the Hanley Park Comfort Station and Parking Lot Expansion Project come back to the Public Works Committee before it goes out for bid.
I'll second that.
There's been a motion by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Gould. Is there further discussion? Not seeing any. All right, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harder. Yes. Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
carries. Vote of 4-0.
Oh, do you want to, I'm sorry, you were blocked by the podium from my eyesight. Do you have a, I certainly would, if you had questions, we'll stay past 7 for you. All right, well, item 9
I
is
just
a
closed
citizen
it.
comment. Do we have anyone, there's no one in the audience physically present. Is there anyone virtually present that has their hand raised that would like to make a comment?
There are, but no hands raised.
Okay, well then we'll move on from that. Just before we adjourn, pretty much by 6:30, special thank you for, to Bola, to all the department heads, to this committee for putting in the time, the work, the effort. I think that we thoroughly reviewed this budget and did the work to bring it onto the board. So I sincerely thank you for your time. And seeing no further business, this committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.